Donald Trump can win the state of Virginia in the 2024 presidential election, a state that no Republican has won since George W. Bush in 2004, and a state where the latest polls are showing a hyper competitive race between Trump and Harris. Today, we'll be taking a look at all of the new polling data from the Commonwealth of Virginia, as well as the 2024 electoral map, if Donald Trump is able to indeed pull off a victory in the state. And starting off by taking a look at this poll, Trump and Harris are in a complete tie according to 1,000 adults in Virginia. If you look at the poll with likely voters, Harris had a 1 point lead. So really, this just goes to show you how competitive Virginia is going to be this election cycle. According to 538, Harris has a 6.8% lead in the state, but according to Real Clear Politics, which generally is more accurate, she leads by just a 4.8. In fact, Real Clear Politics only recognizes 6 polls that have been released between Harris and Trump, and all of them have been factored into this average. If you see, before Kamala Harris entered the race, this is in early July, Harris led by 5 points. Right after she joined in the middle of August, her lead fell down to 3%. And today, according to the most recent Rasmussen Reports poll, she leads by just 3. And Rasmussen has proven themselves time and time again to be one of the most accurate pollsters in the entire country. In fact, half of the 6 polls that have been released between Trump and Harris in Virginia show the Democrat leading by 3 percentage points or less. That is absolutely abysmal if you consider that Joe Biden won the state by a double-digit margin just 4 years ago. Biden's performance was actually the best for any Democratic nominee in Virginia since 1944. That was the last time that any Democrat won the state by a double-digit margin. And if you go back 4 more years, you'll see Hillary Clinton do much worse than Biden. She won by just 5.3%, even though she ran with Tim Kaine, a sitting senator from the state, who is actually up for re-election this November. And so if we look at the map, generally we're told that there are 7 swing states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania in the Midwest, as well as Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina in the Sun Belt. But I would argue that Virginia is the 8th battleground state. Polling is showing that this state is competitive. Now, generally, it does favor Harris slightly more than Trump, but it is still going to be extremely competitive, especially considering the GOP's success here over the last few years. In 2021, a red wave washed over Virginia. Glenn Youngkin was elected the Republican governor of the state, defeating former Governor Terry McAuliffe. This was a huge upset for the GOP. They won the race by just under 2%, but it was the first time any Republican won a statewide race in Virginia since 2009. But on top of the governorship, Republicans also clinched the lieutenant governorship, with Winsome Sears elected as Virginia's lieutenant governor. And then in the attorney general race, this race was also won by a Republican. So 3 years ago, we saw huge successes for the GOP in Virginia, and that is quite indicative of the state's turn to the right in the last couple of years. Now, if you were to look at the polling, you might say, oh, Kamala Harris still leads by 4.8%. I mean, that's still a pretty formidable lead for the vice president. She is definitely still the favored candidate, but this is by no means a guarantee that she is actually going to be able to win this state. In fact, there's a pretty good chance that she loses Virginia altogether. If you look at polling from 2020, Joe Biden was supposed to win Wisconsin by 8.4%. I mean, he basically had the state in the bag if you looked at the numbers. He was polling much better in Wisconsin than Kamala Harris is right now in Virginia. And guess what happened in the end? Yes, Joe Biden did win Wisconsin, but he won it by 0.6%. This is just how much polling can overestimate Democrats, which is why if you look at this 4.8% number, you really shouldn't feel intimidated. This is not something that Trump hasn't overcome before. He was doing much worse in the polling in virtually every single swing state in 2016 and 2020, and he was still able to win very many of them. And if you look at the odds on Polymarket, Democrats have an 88% chance at winning Virginia. In fact, their odds went down to just 57 at one point before Joe Biden dropped out. That was how low they got. It was basically a dead heat in the state. Now, Kamala Harris now is doing much better than Joe Biden was before, but still, Republicans have a 13% chance at winning a state they haven't won in 20 years. That is pretty significant because in 2020, Joe Biden had a 97% 50% chance at winning a state like Virginia. But in 2024, Republicans are in a much better position than they were in 4 years ago. In fact, before Joe Biden dropped out of the election, he was losing to Trump in the polling, not just in a single poll or two polls, but in the polling average as a whole. Trump had a 0.4% lead. That was how well the former president was doing in the state before Democrats replaced their nominee. If Joe Biden had not dropped out, Republicans would almost be guaranteed right now to win Virginia by around 2 percentage points. And before we continue on to filling in the map, 83% of you guys are not currently subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And join my Discord server to chat with me personally. Link in the description below. And so now I'm going to show you guys what the 2024 electoral map would look like if Trump does indeed pull off a victory in Virginia, which is not next to impossible. In fact, Trump has a better chance of winning Virginia today than he had of winning the entire 2016 election 8 years ago. So we're going to start off by filling in the safe states in this scenario. These are states that Harris or Trump are going to win by 15 percentage points or more. And so for Harris, she's going to win California, Hawaii, Vermont, Massachusetts, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine, giving her just 86 electoral votes. And now for the solid Trump states, he's easily going to win Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, and the 2nd District of Maine. But we're also going to give him Iowa, a state that was blue just 12 years ago. Obama won it by 6 points. Then Trump flips it, shifts it 15 points to the right, and wins Iowa by nearly a double-digit margin. In 2020, everybody says he's going to do a lot worse, but instead he wins it by basically the exact same margin. Iowa is a red state now. On the presidential level, it can definitely be solid for Trump if he indeed is able to win Virginia. Next up, we have the likely states for both candidates. These states are going to be decided by margins of 7 to 15 percentage points, starting off with the likely blue states. On the West Coast, we still have Washington and Oregon. Yes, Kamala Harris is not going to win these states by 15 points, but she would still be the relative favorite. We also have Illinois, a state that Democrats have won by 17% in all 3 of the last 3 elections. And then in the Northeast, she's going to pull off a pretty poor performance in New York, but it's still going to be likely blue. She's also going to win Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Delaware, and this will put her up at 181 electoral votes. As for Trump, he's easily going to carry Ohio. Iowa and Ohio are going to vote pretty similarly to each other, just like they've done in the last 2 elections. In 2016, it was 9.4 in Iowa, 8.1 in Ohio. In 2020, it was basically 8% in both of the states. However, Iowa is slightly more conservative than the Buckeye State, which is why I have Ohio as likely red. Trump's probably going to win it by 13 to 15 points in this scenario, so still a very strong performance from the GOP. And then down in Texas, there's no way Kamala Harris is going to be competitive here. The Lone Star State is going to go to Trump for a 3rd time in a row. This is a state that no Democrat has won since 1976. Trump didn't do the greatest in 2020, winning the state by less than 6%. But in 2024, he's probably going to double his margin and win Texas by around 12 points. And then in Florida, we have 30 electoral votes. These 30 electoral votes used to be among the most competitive in the entire country. In 2000, they single-handedly gave George W. Bush the election when Florida only had 25 electoral votes at the time. In 2008, it went to Obama by a narrow margin. In 2012, it was even closer. It was the only tilt state on the map. 2016, a tilt once again, but in favor of Trump. And then in 2020, Trump wins the Sunshine State by a larger margin than even Obama won it back in 2008. And Trump won against Joe Biden. Everybody thought Joe Biden would at least do better than Hillary Clinton in the state, but instead of winning it, he lost it by an even larger margin. And today, Florida is a red state. Its Republican governor was reelected by a 20-point margin in 2022, and it's not going back. Florida is going to be likely red. Trump is going to win it by a double-digit digit margin if he can win Virginia. Next up, we have the lean states, which will be decided by 2 to 7 points. These are really going to be hyper competitive. They make up a quarter of the entire electoral college, and Trump has really expanded the electoral map this time around. States like Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, Maine, and New Hampshire are among the most competitive, when Joe Biden won them pretty easily back in 2020. And so starting off with the only lean blue state we have on the map, it will be Colorado. Kamala Harris is going to win it by just under 7 points, so it's pretty close to being likely blue, but for right now, we'll have it in the lean Harris category if she does lose Virginia. While for Trump, we have a pretty extended list of lean states, starting down south with North Carolina and Georgia. These are two traditionally red states that have become a lot more competitive in recent years. Trump won North Carolina by 1.3%. He won it by nearly 4 in 2016. In 2016, he won Georgia by 5 points, but in 2020, he actually lost the Peach State by just less than a quarter of a percentage point. Kamala Harris is in no way on track to repeat the incumbent president's success in the state from 4 years ago, and so both the Tar Heel State and the Peach State are going to be lean red on our map. Moving west to Nevada and Arizona, we have two states that went to Biden in the last election. Nevada's been blue since 2008, but Arizona, this was a surprise flip for the Biden campaign. No Democrat had won the state before Biden, going all the way back to Bill Clinton in 1996. Biden won by a very small margin, but he was running when there was a worldwide pandemic. There was also a recession just months before the election. It could not have been worse for Trump in terms of the national environment, and so that is how Joe Biden was able to flip states like Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, three states that won him the election. If he didn't win these three states, he would have lost it entirely, but today Trump is in a much stronger position and is easily on track to flip both Nevada and Arizona back. He's going to win them by around 2 to 5 points in this scenario. And then moving up to the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the three states that are touted as being the most important in the country, especially Pennsylvania. It is very likely that whoever wins Pennsylvania will end up winning the election. That is why both campaigns are spending hundreds of millions of dollars advertising the state and also constantly visiting it. And if you look at the electoral map, in 2020, it was these three states that got Joe Biden over 270. He did not need Georgia or Arizona. He still would have been at over the 270 threshold. 2016, it was Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania that won Trump the election. If he didn't win these three states, he would not have been able to get to 270. And so Trump has won all three of these states before. Now, it was close. In 2020, Joe Biden did win them back. But again, this was under very good circumstances for Democrats. Before 2016, no Republican had won these three blue wall states. They were called the blue wall because they always voted for Democrats. It's not really the blue wall anymore, but people still refer to it as that. Really, it's the former blue wall that Trump pushed over 8 years ago. And so today, if he does win Virginia, he is easily going to carry all three of these upper Midwestern states by 2 percentage points or more. And finally, we have the tilt states. These 5 states will be the most competitive in the entire country. They'll be decided by 2 percentage points or less. We're going to start off with Virginia. If Trump does win the state, it's going to be by 2 percentage points or less. It is going to be very, very close. Kamala Harris is still slightly favored in the state, but Trump's odds are good enough that they should worry the Harris campaign. We also have Minnesota, 10 electoral votes from Tim Walz's home state. Trump can definitely pull off a victory there if he's able to win Virginia. These two states are going to vote pretty similarly to each other, just like they did in both 2016 and 2020. And then up in the Northeast, we have New Hampshire, a state that Donald Trump almost won in 2016. He lost it to Hillary Clinton by 0.37%. He can win it this time around against Kamala Harris. And then the 2nd District of Nebraska, 1 electoral vote. That's going to go in favor of the former president. He's not going to need all of Nebraska's electoral votes to be allocated together, which is something that Republicans are wanting to do because there's still a good chance that Kamala Harris can win the 2nd District. But if Trump can win Virginia, that's not going to be a problem at all. And then finally, for the vice president, she will be the winner in both New Mexico and Maine. These two states simply are too liberal to flip at this time, but we'll keep an eye out on them to see how it develops in the next month, see if Trump has a chance. And so if Trump can indeed flip Virginia, he's also going to flip Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, the 2nd District of Maine, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, giving him 340 electoral votes. Kamala Harris at 198. This will be the first time a Democrat doesn't win 200 since Michael Dukakis in 1988. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below.